All right, welcome back. We're here with a very special guest today, Lieutenant Bob Coschignano, nationwide known, I believe, if not internationally known, hazmat guy, super smart, and we're blessed to have him on. So thanks, Bob, for being here.
Thank you. And I think internationally known or nationally known is because of all the mug shots in the post offices and stuff. Is what I'm referring to.
Yeah. So tell us about.
No, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself. Where you worked. Just give us a light or whatever.
I'm going to give you guys a Reader's Digest version. 30 years in the fire service, been retired 5, which I can't believe I've been retired 5 already. And
Yeah.
I smoke cigars, drink rum, and play golf.
Sweet.
Anything else you want to know? Hit me up at a bar at a conference, and I'll bore you to death.
Oh, that's the dream, right? That's the finish line. But
it is a dream. I do the conferences and teaching here and there, mostly to get it in my wife's hair. When I've been around the house too long, she's like, don't you need to go teach someplace or something?
Yeah, it's about time for you to go to a conference or something.
Oh, yeah. Good.
I think I met you first when
go do something.
Yeah. I think I met you first time I met you was several years ago with Hassim, I believe, and we met up at FDIC for a short demo. But yeah. Yeah, thanks again for being on. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to diving into this white powder conversation with you. So,
absolutely,
yeah,
so to speak.
Yeah. So we'll kick it off just with.
I am in Florida. I mean, come on.
Yeah, right. So basically, a lot of our guys, when we get dispatched to these things, they're on engine companies, so not specialized companies. So the way we operate is we have kind of a cross-staffed hazmat unit. So whenever we get a call, we'll kind of gather up and then go to the scene and help solve the problem. But usually these first companies are getting there and kind of setting it up for us for when we get there. But what did you guys do? Like, did you have an SOP or kind of an approach for the first driving engines or ladders to set stuff up?
So we in 01, when the whole powder call thing really kicked off, I hadn't got promoted lieutenant yet. I was just about to, and we were literally running, I don't know, 30, 40 powder calls a day in October of 01 when all that shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
And we were literally doing HazCat kits on the tailboard of our hazmat truck or fire engine. We didn't have 2020s, we didn't have Raid 8s, we didn't have PCR. We certainly didn't have any of the technology, the Raman and FTIR stuff that was out there today. We didn't have all that. I think shortly after that we got a travel IR that was, came out of this huge box, and it took 3 people to put the damn thing together.
Yeah.
So that's just the tech side of it. From the ops side, when we started going to these, we're like, okay, we got a problem because ops people, what they're trained to is supposed to be defensive actions, right? And getting intel and briefing us and stuff like that. We had to write a short little, I wouldn't call it an SOP because they never put it out in SOP, but more of a memorandum that, you pull up on scene as a residence, try to talk to them through the door, try to talk to them through the window, try to talk to them remotely of some way. So you're not making contact. We had crews that would walk right into a house, would walk right into an office building. So yeah, we did come up with a short, kind of thing like that. And like I said, for the residents, it was more talking to the door. Office buildings and high rises that we had, we tried talking to them from maybe the office or 2 next door, or calling their office from the lobby and trying to get as much information as we could before we went up and started putting our IAP together.
Sure. We kind of do the same thing, but sometimes we get these calls from the FBI hazmat coordinator or WMD coordinator, I'm sorry, and we show up and we're just kind of verifying. But sometimes they're credible that they call it, but sometimes they're not. But did you guys have kind of the same thing sometimes?
we had um we had a joint terrorism task force here in Central Florida. So we had members of our department, members of a couple other departments, and they all worked hand in hand with the FBI. So the when I was a hazmat lieutenant, the our my main role was to contact them and say, "Hey, listen, this is what we've got." Now, kind of set the stage a little bit. My department's one I think of maybe 7 or 8 in the country that has the bomb team as part of the fire department,
Oh, that's
not law
right.
Mm,
Yeah.
enforcement.
wow.
It
So having yeah, so it
Mhm.
was really cool. Um, that gave us and matter of fact, my dad was in charge of that team for a long
I
time,
was gonna say
before
your
he
dad did
retired.
that, yeah,
Um,
mhm.
yeah, so having those people already working together really helped. We didn't have to call them a lot because they were already handling it, and after we ran so many, it's like, okay, what's a credible threat? Like the lady up in the Northeast that died of anthrax, her mail rubbed against somebody else's mail. Well, so she didn't have a credible threat. It's just bad luck, bad timing, right?
Right.
Um, a powder call we had was discovered from a fire, and when we opened up the closet, we're typically do monitoring or detection or sampling or whatever your process is with one powder, right?
Uh-huh.
This particular turned out my man was making ricin, so
Nice, yeah.
so um now the black SUVs show up. Now we make that call, and so we tried to handle a lot of things at I say my level, the hazmat lieutenant, special ops chief, and then our bomb squad guys. We tried to handle it there. If it was beyond that or something that was legit, like the ricin, then that's when the federal agencies came into play.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Hmm.
and
So
it's
what was some of the stuff for like the first in, like the questioning and stuff like that? Because that's the big stuff, like for me, that I'm trying to spread out to like my
Mhm.
district and some of the surrounding ones is a lot of like the first in company officer decision making rolling up on this. And we had one probably 20 something years ago that I was on that I remember we showed up and nobody really had a clue what was going on. It was kind of brand new in the area and basically just blocked off everything like you said. And I remember the FBI guy shows up and
Right.
walked right up, looked at it and like, oh, got it, threw it in like a Pelican case and walked away. It was like, oh, that was simple enough.
Yeah.
And we all kind of stopped for a minute.
Right.
It's like, oh,
And setting a bad precedent.
yeah. We're like, oh man, if that's all this is, geez. But that's like our
Right.
biggest thing is just trying to get. We've got a lot of guys that are kind of like, oh, that's never going to happen here, or the like, oh, well, I'm just going to show up and wait for the hazmat team. So that's why I'm always kind of curious about like how you guys did it for like your
Yeah.
first in engine companies. Like, hey, you just got dispatched this call 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What's some of their concerns and what are they looking at and
Yeah.
asking?
The first thing that they're doing is, and again, is we had to reemphasize this multiple times until they started understanding, make contact remotely if at all possible. Are there any signs and symptoms? Because if they just open something and there's already kinds of symptoms, you can pretty much rule out biological right off the bat, right?
yeah,
Um, there's a lot of things that we ask them, the signs and symptoms. What makes it suspicious? What happened? Where were you? Have you come in contact with anybody else? Basically just as much intel as possible so that we could that could get passed on to the hazmat team.
Did
absolutely.
uh did your first in engine companies have any meters or anything like that that they'd take with them, or was it just straight engine companies?
Nope, they still don't. We have of our 7 truck companies, 3 are hazmat, 3 are tech rescue, and one's just a standalone truck company, but all of them have a multi-gas meter.
Hmm.
The hazmat truck companies, they do have a small sampling box that they can do some basic, and I mean real basic pH paper, um, some of your bear claw papers, all that stuff, and 2 gas monitors, and then hazmat one comes with all the rate aids, the PCR, the ramen, all that other stuff, and so they're kind of gathering information with that first 2 engine company, um, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. We try and approach stuff, or at least we have for the past about 10 years or so. We got onto the hazmat IQ system, and we take the Stay Alive
Mhm.
5 every time. Thanks to you know Mr. Aguirre for getting that going. But I think it kind of it's the same thing, like you said. That lady that got the exposure, but she wasn't really credible. It's kind of the same thing when you run a fire
Right.
alarm, right? It's like, well, are you going to dress up and act like it is in case it really is, or are you going to walk
Yeah.
up to the
Practice like you play.
right?
Mm.
Are you going to walk up to the envelope with powder in it and be like, oh, it's nothing, get all over your
Yeah.
hands, walk away? And it's like, oh, I'm getting kind of sick. That turns out that was anthrax for whatever reason, or ricin, or whatever. So we
Or now
just
fentanyl.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we've kind of shifted to taking that approach to everything, as I think you should go about any way that you do about the job, but go prepared and expect something. And
But
if
we just
it's
had that talk a couple
Oh,
weeks, Nick. I
absolutely.
mean, one of the last ones that you had where that was kind of your decision was, hey, we're going to send people downrange and with everything and go through all the motions. And
oh
like I
yeah,
always look at that as that's still great training. Like
yeah,
how often do we get the team
Absolutely.
together and get to actually suit out and go through all the steps and everything like that? And that's great opportunities.
yeah, that
So,
one I was made the call for what we were wearing and what we were taking, and I got a little flack for getting everybody dressed, and I was like, man, I'm not gonna be the one who gets caught with in a rock and a hard place, So we're gonna take it seriously, just like we should everything. But
mhm.
There is no reason not to. We turned a lot of calls into training evolutions. I
sure,
mean, what better time, and honestly, we that's where we tweak some of our processes. Whether we went downrange wearing level C, basically a PAPR, um, and our kits. What are we going to bring down range in our kits? Is there a set thing for bio? Is there a set thing for chem? We those are a lot of things that we tweaked by doing those calls repetitively, and then going, hey, you know what? Let's talk about the good and the ugly of what went down, and that's how you make things better. And nobody should ever criticize you for wanting to go. I'm not even calling above and beyond doing your job.
yeah, bare minimums, yeah,
Nobody should criticize you for that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So our decon units are on top of it. We got two agencies that are awesome with that, and they come from other departments. So we bring the main hazmat truck with a Creve Coeur district, and then the others come with the hazmat unit, either north or south. But did you guys have any system to where, like, okay, this is a white powder, here's what we're doing for decon specifically, or how was that changing, or whatever when you left or when you were still on?
Yeah, when I was there, every engine company was trained on how to do decon, right?
Hmm.
And for the most part, and that was for hazmat, for general hazmat calls. For this kind of stuff, Engine 101 has 4 people on it. Hazmat one has one guy on it. And then if we had a truck come in, a hazmat truck come in, there's another 4. So between us, we handled everything for the most part, and except for obviously that one ricin call. Um, and it was really in the beginnings, it was nothing more than a bleach and water solution. Um, at the time, there was a lot of, we're going back to '01. There's a lot of things that were just coming out on their proper way of, how do you, let's go to setting up an area, for sampling, a clean area as best as possible. And then, are we going to spray a bleach solution here and there? I mean, there were so many things coming out, and some good, some bad. But our bottom line was we had a 2.5 gallon sprayer with a bleach water solution. And when the guys came out, we pretty much used that, and that was it. I mean, it wasn't any like great whatever. I believe the guys, they're using a commercialized system now. So you adapt, but they still have the basics, in which I try to remind people. It's great to have all this fancy stuff out there, but also don't forget the basics. I mean,
Yeah.
basics still work.
Yeah.
So
With going through decon, and if you guys did have something credible with patients and everything like that, what was your relationships with the hospital and transporting? And was there anything specific for like your medics on the ambulance that you guys did, or somebody went with them, or?
yeah, we actually what one of not one of my mentor, which his name is pretty well known, Toby Bevilacqua. Him and his partner Rick Stelp, who unfortunately passed away recently, um, they started the hazmat medic program. Um, they've written many books. He had, I believe, the first hazmat medic uh, drug kit, drug box. So we had some medics that were already trained to hazmat medic level, but what we did with the hospitals was the ambulances, or we called them rescue trucks. Was the old CDC Visqueen, the inside of the patient compartment and things like that. Um, so we've taken that and we actually over a period of time. This is just before Ebola, the whole big Ebola scare was a couple of members of my crew came up with an idea of figuring out how many of those plastic blankets you put on the stretcher for your transients or your you know patients that get puke all or whatever, and we figured out how many of those to hang lengthwise in the back of the patient compartment. Pair of goggles, your general PPE precautions you would for it. Let's say COVID patient. What would you wear for a COVID patient? That's what you should be wearing. So we had a system like that, vacuum sealed and under each bench seat. So if they had a contaminated patient, obviously we'd hope that they would be decontaminated before they got in the back of the box and went to the hospital. Even going as far as closing up that pass through that some of the ambulances have between the driver and the patient, closing that up a little bit. But something we have here, and if anybody wants the information, just they can get with you guys and I'll send it to you. We've got what's called a hazmat alert. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but for those that aren't, everybody's heard of trauma alert and a STEMI alert and all these other EMS type alerts. And I use those three letters. I'm married to a medic. That's as close as I ever got. Um, but but what happened was a lieutenant from another department, they had some incidents where organophosphate poisoning closed down some of our major ERs here in Central Florida. And this lieutenant from this other agency said, "Hey, you know what? We have all these alerts. Why don't we make a hazmat alert?" And basically, what it consists of is identifying to the ER, we have a hazmat incident. If we know what it is, we tell them. We identify the decon that's been going on, and they can start looking up what's happening before the patient even gets there, isolating. Because let's be honest, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole on this, but most of the ERs, the hospitals, their decontamination room is a storage room.
Yeah.
So they have to take all the stuff that they've been storing in there for however long and then get it prepped. And then they have to assemble their team. And then they got to get their trailer out that might have 10 years of cobwebs on it. So all these things, by doing this hazmat alert, it kind of helps start the process a lot sooner.
Yeah.
And or hey, we don't really need to go to that degree because these guys have already done that. And that's part of our EMS protocols, that hazmat alert.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like it would definitely be a very beneficial. Like you said, all of ours are the same way, and like
Yeah.
they have to dig out cobwebs and rooms full of stuff to get to that one room, and then you always got. Hopefully, they actually remember how to use
Right.
it. I remember for a while ago that they
Yeah.
turned the decon room and actually into the EMS room where we were sitting there writing our reports and everything next to the decon showers. So
Yep.
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody wants that information, just get a hold of me and I'll email you our protocols and
Oh yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right.
Bob, when you guys ran calls like the hazmat unit, what did you have a specific list of stuff that you took with you initially, like your Say Alive 5 or your kit? first when you first made entry?
Um, eh, it was the basics that everybody uses. You know, we for a long time we were taking one multi-gas meter down, and then everybody's like, "Look, we need to be having two at a minimum." So yeah, how are you going to know if one's wrong or not? You know.
That's true.
So it was the all the papers that everybody uses, two multi-gas meters. Um, you know, the whole rad thing, it depends on the call. What information am I getting? So we had some basic stuff we took down range. Might take a couple sample tubes. And again, a basic, almost like a toolbox or kit. I mean, I'm talking like a small little box with a handle, and you just had a few things in it that you could go downrange. And really, the first initial thing was recon. Unless it's something simple you could fix while you're there, then you fix it.
Yeah.
But we didn't take the whole kitchen sink down with us now.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand. Um,
And that brings up a good point though too, because there's been some talk, and I've seen it in the different groups of, what is your downrange SOP of meters and things like that. And our friends, Bobby and Mike and other guys out there, it's like, really the whole SOP on take this down all the time. There really isn't a whole lot of SOPs in hazmat. It's not like when we go to fires. My right jump has a can and a hook and the irons and whatever. It's call specific. You can't say you're always going to do this. There's no always in hazmat, right? So
yeah.
your basic multi-gas meter, your papers, and then from that you build upon what the call dictates, in my opinion.
Right. No, that's kind of what we do. So like I said, we always take the Stay Alive 5. And then as especially for a white powder, we'll do the BioCheck 2020 kit, and I'll throw in a couple of pro strips
Mhm.
in there too. And we kind of start like a tiered approach. So if Stay Alive 5's clear, which we're kind of expecting, then if we do the BioCheck kit, and if that shows positive for protein and it's a neutral pH, then I'll break out the pro strip because you're kind of getting more expensive as you go, right? And then we've only got one
Right, right.
cartridge for the razor for the PCR, so we kind of work up to that. So if we get some kind of hit on the pro strip, then we'll go to the PCR. But it's kind of a tiered approach, kind of going from cheapest to more expensive, But
Right.
and then we'll run
Yeah,
it
we
through
had
the
for powder calls. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, then
There's a little delay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, then we'll if we like let's say we run it through the biocheck and we get nothing, we'll run it through the ramen and the FTIR and see if we get anything on that. So
Yeah, for everything I mentioned previously, that was your typical hazmat call. Now for a powder call, we had it was actually a laminated sheet we made where it had an algorithm, if you will, where we started off with 2020s and we did a second one, whether it was positive or negative, we always do two tests at least. Then from
okay,
there we went to rate eights, and then from rate eights, we would go to uh, at the time, I don't know if they still had it, but they had a ramp, which I don't know if you're familiar with, is bioluminescence detection device that, and after the powder calls was really good. It was 99% of effective rate. They tested it Dugway proving grounds and the whole 9 yards. It's a pretty decent tool. And then when we got to that point, because the rate eights and everything were okay, what do I got? Now we need something specific.
right,
Well, it's telling me, and I'm just making this up, anthrax. Well, then I would go at that time, like I said, we had ramp. I'd take the ramp specific cartridge out and put it in, and now I'm getting more technology, more definitive. That's going yes, 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 and we stop.
yeah,
And again, this is before we had ramen and all that other stuff. We would stop at that point, push the big red button where everybody starts coming in and starts doing their thing from the feds, and that's where it was. Now, since then, obviously, we've added the the ramens that they have, which I'm not exactly sure which one they've had since I've been gone. 'Cause like I said, I've been gone from there for 5 years. But they've got I know they got ramen, they got FTR, they got a lot of good technologies. Here's the problem that I'm seeing when I go teach different places. Everybody's going straight to that.
Yes.
They're going straight for the easy button. I'm going to take this and I'm going to go put it on here and it's going to tell me it's nothing and we're going to go back to the house and eat dinner. That's the problem. That's the big they're great tools, but it's a tool in the toolkit that you got to get to that process first.
Right.
You can't go to it first, you got to get to it first. And that's the I think our biggest problem we have in our field.
I'll be honest with you, Bob. That's what we used to do about
And
10
then the
years ago.
flip side of that chart, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. And the flip side of that chart had a clean Percy, dirty person procedure. So it
Okay.
laid out that, and these were backed up to each other. So they knew how to follow the algorithm. They flipped it over. This is what the clean person does. This is what the dirty person does as far as getting the samples stuff ready, passing it back and forth. So we tried to stay in that FBI 12-step process. We tried to do all, all the things we learned at all the different classes, whether Dugway, which I don't even think they do that one anymore. That was a good one, or Anison or any of the others. Um, and that seemed to work out good for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of that stuff, finishing up, and you were talking about the FBI and all them. Did you guys do much evidence collection with some of that? I know me and Nick have talked in the past where a lot of these samples or stuff, like if they have to go to court or anything like that, what kind of steps did you guys kind of follow on that line with your techs and everybody?
So there was a kit, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was a biosampling kit. It even had chain of custody forms in it. It had the 3 certified clean jars. I mean, it was a decent kit specifically if we're going to collect a sample. And we trained on the guys on how to do that. Like the stupid stuff people don't even think about. Don't go right in the middle of the sample because you're contaminating everything, right? All the stuff we were taught, or should have been taught anyway. And then we would give that to whoever either was the FBI representative, the Joint Terrorism Task Force representative, and they would take it to the LNR that was the laboratory for us was in Tampa. So they'd have to take it to Tampa to grow the cultures and so on. So
Mhm.
Yep.
that was pretty much it. It wasn't anything crazy overboard. Now we took pictures also of us doing the process, meaning here's the door we're going in. Turn around, there's a door we just came through. Here's a picture of the envelope, the powder, the whatever. What we never did was we never took pictures of us conducting the sample.
Hmm.
We'll take a picture of the results, but not of us conducting the sample. We just felt that there was too much liability in that part that somebody could go, "Oh, you moved your hand a micro to the right," and that just kind of, so we just didn't want to get into all that nonsense.
No,
Yeah.
makes complete sense. Yeah.
So I got to ask you, Bob. You're a seasoned instructor for hazmat, and I I teach a couple of different things, but I've found hazmat to be kind of the hardest sometimes. You got any pointers of how to make it interesting? Because we all grew up, we all came up with, at least I did, with kind of those dud instructors for hazmat. And I was like, man, this is so cool, but I wish everybody loved it as much as I did. But
Mhm.
you know,
I tell you, and you're probably not going to believe this when I tell you, I had no ambition whatsoever in doing hazmat. I mean, you see the helmets behind me on the wall. I was a truck guy. And just by default, we didn't have a heavy rescue at the time. So Tower One was the heavy rescue. We did dive, high angle, and hazmat. And it was just something that I got into. And it worked out well for me. And I got to work with, like I said, my mentor, Toby Bevilacqua, who showed me a tremendous amount of stuff. But as far as instructor goes, it wasn't until I started teaching it at the academy a little bit that I started feeling my sea legs, so to speak. And then because I know this is also going to be hard to believe, I didn't like to talk to people. I didn't like to talk in front of people. I know, crazy, right?
yeah,
I had such a fear of talking in front of people. Now you can't get me to shut up. But it was just of showing the passion. I offered to teach the ops class at the academy, and there was a little group of instructors like, this is my little kingdom. Nobody can come in to do that. and unfortunately, they didn't teach it with enthusiasm. And nothing against these guys, but it wasn't their thing, right? It wasn't like, a knot, tie a lot or whatever. Um, so they put a bad seed into the rookie's head right off the bat about hazmat's horrible.
Yeah.
So trying to get over that hump is a task, and being the instructor to get them over that, you just got to make them realize. I think, like, I just did an ops class here locally, and I asked him. I said, "We'll go to a Bernie building twice on Sunday, right?" And I'm just, "Oh yeah, absolutely." And I said, "But we don't know the structure. Smoke is throughout the building. We can't see. It's hot as hell, and the forces of nature are pushing down on us, and we're cool with that. But I don't want to go to a hazmat call that I know it's a solid liquid or gas. I might even know what kind of container it's coming from, and I have all this cool information, but I don't want to do that. Does that make any sense?" And usually that's where people, when you get them to start thinking, in my opinion, fire related stuff, that that gets them engaged in the hazmat talks. Like in ops class, I show a lot of fire videos or pictures that involve hazmat, because you that's the way to bring them in. Because if you don't, they go, "Oh,
Yeah.
gee, here we go again."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I try to. I'm, obviously Italian with the hands and everything. So I'm a pretty active person when I teach, and I think the more engaging you can be and moving back and forth. Don't stand in one spot. Don't be monotone. Know the material. I never, unless I'm pointing something out, look at what's behind me on the screen. Because if you don't know it, you shouldn't be talking about it.
Mm.
And just show them your passion, but show it in a way that relates to them too. And that's where I throw in fire stuff, because that's why we all got into business, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of brings it up a little.
Yeah, that's kind of where like some of my challenges at my district right now is trying to make it fun again. Like we had the same thing for so many years. It's like, oh, hazmat. All right, this is dumb. We're not going to entertain this. We're not even going to talk
Yep.
about it. And until like kind of for me, I was the same way until I had that one call of like, oh, I'm have to perform as a hazmat tech and go in here and a lot of lessons learned and turn it around and trying to bring that stuff back to our guys. And I've kind of found with us, and I think Nick's kind of got the same stuff, is trying to make it like re-engaging for like the guys that have already been on the job for a while and still have that, because when they brought up like, oh, this is stupid, this
Yeah.
is dumb, we're gonna wait on the hazmat team, and like I've been drilling hard on getting them back in the level A suits and going through the small stuff and sampling, and that's kind of how like me and Nick started a lot of this. Is we started building some training videos and some small stuff to get out. And now it's funny, like we've had a few more calls that required guys to dress out, and the last one we had the whole time there, two guys riding backstep are like, are you kidding me, how'd you get us drug into this? Then we get there like, hey, can you go talk to your buddy Nick and Andy, can you get us down range? Like, oh yeah, now you want to play. So we've had a little bit of a
Right.
more following just by, like you said, making it like re-engaging and active and everything like that. So it's a challenge, but it's fun. So
Yeah, the calls haven't changed. The chemicals haven't changed for the most part. I'm talking generalities, obviously. What's changed is the kids coming up, the technology that's come out, and now you just got to figure out how to merge them all together. And then, that's it. When I was still on the job, I spent almost 20 years at Station One, and then I went to Tower Nine, which is one of our hazmat truck companies. And I had I had the guys we had training suits. I had them set the truck up in level A suit,
mhm.
from outriggers to doing the tools and then they started doing it for time against one another, and they made it a fun thing. And then they're like, "Hey, when can we do that again?" You just gotta think of something different. Don't do the same boring, ABC kit, the same,
Yeah.
that's when people get bored.
Right.
Yeah, there's one of them that we took a little obstacle course with padlocks and chains and having them actually dexterity drills in the level A suits
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And
Yep.
that same thing.
That's one of the that's a common one.
Yeah, I've had a couple of homemade props that I built with garden hoses and pipes and bolts and all that stuff, and
Oh yeah.
it usually like re-engages it and keeps it fun, and that's when we've started getting a little bit more of a following at my district with it, especially some of the younger guys that they start seeing us out there having fun in level A suits and doing everything, and then they're jumping on a little bit more. So
I mentioned Bobby and Mike earlier, that I'm sure you guys know about their nerds book.
Yeah.
There's 50 different drills in that. Me and a bunch of other people wrote in there, and we just submitted more for their second version. And the reason why I bring it up is because don't try and reinvent the wheel. I mean, you certainly can, but
mm,
there's stuff out there if you just look, and they're quick little drills. I mean, take a NIOSH book, sling it across the kitchen table. I want to know what PPE, what air monitors, if any, what respiratory detection, and what decon in 30 seconds. Go. It's not hard, but you put somebody under the gun and they go, oh shit. And really you look at 4 or 5 things and you get the answer in 30 seconds.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good book. I'm looking forward to the next version. I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, it
gotta
should be
ask you,
good.
Bob. Was there any, if any, white powder call that kept you up at night? Like, oh man, I hope I don't get that one, or I hope it's not that.
Um Not really. I mean, the biggest one that kind of, like I said, freaked us, I wouldn't say freak us out, but caught us off guard was that ricin one I mentioned, because that came in as a house fire. The guy was practicing some kind of, I think it's called Wiccan religion, set
Oh
his
yeah.
mattress on fire. And, when we had all these powders, our police department at the time was starting a hazmat team. And I guess they were trying to be like a, another major city in the Northeast and handle their own hazmat. And it didn't work out very well. And at any rate, we had all these powders to test, and there was a chemical formula written up on the board. And I was our department's meth lab guy also. And somebody said, "Hey, is he making meth?" I'm like, "No." And it looked like a C4 chain that he was writing. Like, we thought the guy was making explosives for a minute, and we did find a couple pipe bombs. But when he finally admitted that and we saw the big jar of castor beans, mashed up castor beans, that's when the light bulbs finally came on. Um, and we said, "Hey, are you making ricin?" And he didn't admit to it. And we said, "Well, what are you trying to kill rats?" And he said, "Yeah." And we said, "Two-legged or four-legged?" He goes, "Does it matter?" That he made the hairs on the back of my neck stood up a little
I
bit.
bet.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah,
We just had
but
one of
no,
those.
that's the only one.
Nick, were you on the one we just had recently? There was a full arrest that they were working. I believe the hazmat team came out for decon. They were working a full arrest and kind of looked up, and he had everything sitting there, and the guys like started figuring everything out, and then it was like a huge like decon and going through with everybody after the fact because all the medics and fire guys were just sitting there working this, and finally I think the company officer looked up, and on his nightstand he had everything set. And I'm pretty sure it was a ricin call. They backed everybody out and then called in the
Oh,
hazmat.
really?
Yeah,
No, I don't remember
that was,
that.
that was a couple of years ago. So
I do remember one a couple years ago, but I wasn't on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, little bit with the training stuff. Like we got a lot of newer technicians and putting on the class. What's some stuff and especially like keeping some guys engaged, like classrooms and some of the conferences and stuff. Anything that you recommend? Making sure we send them to or try to bring in town or keep
Um,
them involved in.
um, if you can bring here's the big problem with it being your own instructor, right? Like, the guys get tired of hearing your voice.
Mm-hmm.
That's just uh, and they get tired of it. You can have I, I can come to your department, say the exact same stuff at mouth. So I definitely, if budgets or grants or whatever allow, get people to come in the Xerxes, the Nevada. And like I said, I don't know if they do Dugway anymore or not. That was the big bio class, the way pronouns out. If they do, if that still is in operation, I would definitely recommend that as one of the top 3 or 4. But get into some of these federal classes because you get a lot of good instructors and you got a lot of good content coming out and you see things from a different perspective. As far as conferences goes, obviously Baltimore, that's everybody jokes and says that's our version of FDIC, and it is quite honestly for hazmat.
Yep.
Our conference here in Florida in January, there's I think we just shy of
Uh-oh.
700 people,
There it is.
if I'm not mistaken. I could be off by mission. There's a bunch of absolutely go, and even if it's three classes talking the same topic, like chemistry, for instance, go sit on a different one every time you go and get a different perspective, or sit in it for a half hour, an hour, and then go bounce into somebody else's and check it out. My whole thing and my company's mantra is when you're through learning, you're through,
Mm.
and I believe that 100%. I still learn stuff to this day.
Absolutely. Well, we've got some of the slides from the call that you sent over, like the case review on the green gas. If you want to talk about
Yeah,
that a little bit, we got plenty of time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll pop it up there. I think it was 2013, if I remember right. Um, Now, kind of set the stage a little bit. Engine 101 is not only a hazmat engine company, and what we call the hazmat group, but we have a first new area to cover of downtown, the high rises, and then some older Queen Anne buildings from late 1800s, early 1900s, what have you. And so my first day back, and I had been off for a month from a back injury. And about noon, we were eating lunch at Station One, and the guy said, "Hey, did you hear that?" And I'm like, "I didn't hear shit. I'm eating my my lunch."
Yeah.
Um, we had what's called I got priorities, bro. Um,
Yeah.
so we have what's called pulse point. Some departments don't, but it's basically another thing that people use to get a jump on dispatch.
Mhm.
That's how we used it. So all of a sudden, this went off, and you could see it was saying explosion, this, that, and the other. And then the tones dropped, and it was a call for an explosion at a building downtown Orlando. It was actually, I think, 3 or 4 blocks from the house. And this particular building, we do fire inspections. We're not fire inspectors, but the first 2 units go inspect so many buildings, and then the next year the inspectors will do it. We
Mhm.
tried to get in this building for 4 or 5 years, and it was an old building from the 20s. Had heavy timber, terracotta tile, had a lot of stuff that we didn't even know. It had a basement. Believe it or not, there are basements in Florida, people. Um, and when we pulled, yeah, when we pulled around the corner, and oh, by the way, this was September. It was I forget what day in September, but it was right around the anniversary of 9/11. So everybody was already on edge.
Right.
Where the explosion was a couple buildings away from a building that, let's just say, government entities with initials hang out at. That's undisclosed. So that made it a little more unnerving. But when we pulled around the corner, if you want to hit the
Yeah.
next picture, that's the tank. We'll talk more about in a second. Oh, go back one. I want to mention something too. So these are our hazmat truck companies, and then Hazmat One and 101, and then now we get a new hazmat truck. But those are all the hazmat team members. So uh, you have over 16 techs on duty at any one time. Um, I think actually probably a little more. And then you have others that are technicians that are not part of the paid team. But next one. I want to talk about this hazmat team roster. This is a daily roster that we put up. The hazmat officer does every morning, and he looks at the roster to see who's on duty from what truck companies, and then along with Engine 101, and assigns them their positions, whether it's hazmat officers, safety, research, entry, so on. And then, as I mentioned, we have an EOD component, so we help our bomb guys get dressed out, and we're actually their RIT as well. Um,
Huh, yeah.
and then pump offs and confined space. So it's just something that we put together each morning. It kind of makes things a little more organized. You can do it however you want. This is just one of the ways that we did ours. So, and then that gets sent out to all the hazmat truck companies. So everybody's got a picture has this emailed.
Nice.
The next one. So in relation, and you might have to click one more time. You can see where station one is to where the proximity is. So that's the explosion. And then you click one more time, it should show you how close it is to station one
That's like a block.
right there. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's not that far. That's Interstate 4 right there, the Amway Center where the Magic play. And then what you can't it looks like a roadway right at the bottom of those circles. That's actually a rail line.
Oh,
Amtrak, CSX, Florida Rail, all that going through there. So you have a lot of issues going on there. So when we came around the corner, I think the next picture will show the building we were dispatched to. And that's the building. And you pull up, we're coming from left to right, so I see three sides of it. Two-story concrete block, nothing showing, investigating, short synopsis of what I said. And when I went down the alleyway, I could now see the back of the building that actually blew up. So this is the building in question, but now you're gonna see what we saw. Blew it out. What does that look like to you guys?
looks like a gas explosion to me.
Yeah.
Looks like looks like a natural gas or propane explosion, right? That's
Right.
what we were thinking. But what's missing? I got no fire. I got no smoke. I got no nothing.
True.
And except cops running around with their painter masks on and guns pulled out because, like I said, this was close to a undisclosed location for them, and it was around the anniversary date of 9/11. So nobody knew. And if you look at the bricks there, that's the old terracotta tile that instead of what we see today is concrete block. That was the concrete block of the 20s, and 30s and 40s. So it's and then they just had a real thin veneer of drywall on top of that on the side. Or not drywall. I'm sorry. Um, just went away. Outer covering of those bricks,
Yeah.
um, and that was it. So, and you can't see it in the picture, but there's two. They had 13 of these tanks,
Oh
and
wow.
I'll talk more about how the what was made of that in a second. Yeah, so you can't. It's hard to see in this picture. There's two of them laying in that rubble right there.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's one, and the other one's just behind that to the right.
Can I ask what
So again, we get dispatched to this. Yeah,
what was the conditions like in the building? Because we were talking earlier, like I was in there and took a tour of this place a few years ago. I think it was um
right.
2021, 2022. It was like I wouldn't say hoarder, but it was like definitely very crowded. Like more if I was going
Yeah,
there to fight a fire, it'd be like a little oh shit
right.
nerve wracking a little bit. Was it like that back then too? Or
Yeah.
yeah, all right. And
Um. Well, we never were able to get into it
okay.
beforehand. So, um,
That was my other
I've talked to
question with
people afterwards, and
did the owner just not let you guys in, or is that just kind of a common thing if like certain businesses you're just like if they say no, then you guys
it
just
was
get in
it.
there? Or,
We never either they never came to the door or nobody was ever there. And
okay.
this is in the middle of the day many times.
Yeah.
So we just walked around the outside, saw what we could see, and went on. But if you hit the next one, Nick.
Yeah.
So this is the Charlie side of the building behind the dispatch address. So we had units relocate. This is what it looked like inside. It literally looked like a bomb went off inside. To the left, this is the big warehouse area. To the left of it's more of an office area and shelving and whatnot. So it blew that hole out and it blew all that debris everywhere. So here's the problem. I've got it's not a gas explosion anymore because we had, like I said, no fire, no smoke, nothing like that. We don't know what caused it. We've got all this stuff because it's September, the anniversary date. And was this guy making a bomb? Was this guy, it was crazy. So, like I said, fortunately, our bomb team is part of our department. So when we all showed up together, we're like, okay, we need to figure out how we can get in there and look around. And people say, well, what'd you go in there for? Well, life safety is still number one, people. You still got to make sure somebody's not dead.
Right.
So we had we had some crews that did a real quick primary search inside and outside. And then right about the same time, the owner that I think that you had mentioned talking to, him and his scientist showed up. And this is what we call a garage scientist. The guy allegedly did some stuff at UCF, our University of Central Florida, but did most of his stuff off-site so that they wouldn't have the rights to whatever. So he was making this green gas. And basically what they used it for is they put it in different types of cylinders and containers and whatever, and used it for cooking. They used it for heating. They used it even as a doing torch work. Um, when he came up and was telling me about it, I said, "Well, do you have an MSDS sheet?" And he literally, this is no shit, pulled out a napkin out of his back pocket and put it on the hood of the cop car and said, "Yeah, this." And I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "That's my MSDS sheet." I go, "Yeah, it's not going to cut it." So so then the cops thought everything was really weird. So the people in the black SUVs took them away for a while. And they went and talked to him. We got to figure out. He goes, "Hey, I got 13 bottles in there." So what were you doing? He goes, I have this experimental gas. It's called carbohydrylium. We actually wrote a lessons learned in it. I think if you go back, then fire engineer and fire house, I forget which, in like 2018, 2016, somewhere there, we did a whole big spread on it. But basically through a process of using arc welder rods, um, in underwater and some other process I'm not going to talk about here. They created this flammable gas. I mean, we had hydrogen, it's got hydrogen, it's got CO. There's all kinds of things in it that on a normal day, like, yeah, this could explode very easily. And he was selling this to restaurants as an alternative cooking fuel. Matter of fact, while we were messing with this, we had a restaurant from the Kissimmee area, which is south of Orlando, called and said, "Hey, we're watching the news and that guy sold us one of these bottles. Can you come get it?" We're like, "No, we're a little busy right now. We'll get back to you. Take it outside." Um, and it was a 150-pound, yeah, right? Yeah, I'm gonna stop what we're doing. Uh, and it was a 150-pound cylinder. So if you look at that debris, we know we got okay. Now we know we got some type of flammable gas in 13 different bottles. Oh, by the way, I've had 4 other minor leaks. This is what he tells us. And we have no idea where these bottles are now because they're not where he said they were. And we got to find them and then purge the gas off.
Perfect. Yeah.
So it took a while. So yeah, it's like, like I had to pick this day to return back to work. What the hell? Oh, first thing is, well, look at the debris. Let's send in our bomb squad guy. Well, is a bomb squad guy going to be able to climb around all that shit with his bomb suit on? No, that's not happening. So, all right, we'll send the bomb robot in to look around and see if we can find it. Well, the robot's not climbing all over that shit with monitors and bunker and SCBA to try and find it all. I was dumbass number one, and my senior fireman was dumbass number two. But that was my call, and I'm going to be the guy that goes in, and if something goes wrong, it's with me. So, um, yeah, exactly, robot bomb tech, and that was the priority. That's what was going to work. So what we ended up doing was, yeah, that's how the cylinder filleted open. The we had at the time MSA Cirrus with Bluetooth capability, and our plan was that we drag in a ram nozzle. Sure, everybody was familiar with the simple 3-inch line to a ram nozzle with fog,
Yeah.
and we would find the valve. The robot was already in there. We got it in as far as we could, so that we could watch via the robot's camera and listen through its mic when it was done hissing or if anything was going on. And the plan was we'd go in there, drag this nozzle, find the tank, bleed it off, walk out. Well, and then the hydraulic ventilation would push the gas out the big gaping hole. Right. That's how we're going to get rid of it through all these bottles. And then after you're done, you go back in, you shut off the tank, you mark it, you draw it on a map so we can keep track, and then you pick up the hose and you drag it everywhere else for the next 6 hours. That was the process, which sucked.
Yeah.
But what we found is our tactic worked because through our remote air monitoring, because when I asked the guy, is this flammable gas? What kind of flammable gas were we dealing with? He was giving me shit. It's like, it's not a flammable gas. I'm like, you're telling me you're cooking with it. You're using it as a yeah. Now there's no correction factors
Right.
because I don't know what the hell it is.
Right.
But it's at 78% LEL. We did our high, and all I was looking at was numbers. That's all I cared about at that point. 78%, okay. Hung it up hydraulically, looked at it remotely, dropped it down to 3%. It told me my tactic was working.
Yeah.
So just by doing that, even though I had no correction factor, I didn't know what the gas was. I'm just looking at the number to see if it's changing. That was a home run. That was a home run. So yeah, here's some of the compounds that are present. Acetylene, methane, ethylene, propane. I mean, a hodgepodge of shit that can explode, right?
It's
Um,
it's not flammable though,
and
right?
then so basically what happened was this process has water involved, but through this process there are water of that tank that you see there in that rustic looking color, and it just found a weak part in the metal. This tank was actually in an acetylene pack,
Huh.
and he was using it for torch work. Process for 6 or so hours, and until done, we shut down the rail line. The mayor showed up. He wasn't happy, but whatever. And I almost had to shut down I-4, which is a major, literally right through the center of Orlando. So, fortunately, we didn't have to do that. But yeah, it was a long, long day.
I bet.
That was a long day.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yep. Good stuff. And that's never heard anything else about that guy. There's some different ways that they were capturing the material. On the right, you can see it's almost like a bladder that they trap the gas in it. Another one where they're putting it in different tanks. I mean, all these things that they put it in, none of it was ever designed or licensed or tested or whatever. It was just different things that they put the gas in.
Huh.
He had a video of him cooking a steak. He put it in one of his propane tanks and was cooking a steak with it. So, yeah. Anyway, there you go. So yeah, some of the lessons learned from it real quick. We talked about gaining as much intelligence as possible, having that IAP, that instant action plan. We had 3 different plans and we had to go with option C for the reasons that we talked about. Rotating crews out. It was very tedious work crawling up and over and around and under debris, dragging a 3-inch hose all over the place, and then going to work by venting the gas out. There was some discussion. There was a person teaching a company that was brought into our area and about, this needed to do all that. This was a federal thing. Well, no, he broke no federal laws. There's nothing that says you can't do this. This was just oops. No, it's not a federal thing. Maybe to investigate it afterwards, but not as
Right.
far as cleaning up anything. So, and remember, what's our main job? Life safety. I
Yep.
can't leave 13 tanks that have been rocketed through a building unchecked and just say, okay, boys, pick up, time to go home. You can't do that.
Right. Now, just to be clear, when your entry teams went in, were they
So,
in turnout gear and SCBAs, or was it something else?
yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Bunker and SCBA.
Cool. Nice.
Nope, bunker and SCBA because even though we didn't have any gas, something blew up. That's bunker and SCBA all day.
Yeah, 100%. Well, awesome. That's very, very interesting. I'd like to read more about that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for sharing, Bob. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, again, appreciate you having you on. And you got any other words of advice or anything for us?
Company's mottos: when you're through learning, you're through. Don't just be the guy that checks in and checks out every day at work. Um, Start study up on stuff. There's new stuff coming out. So many new things that have come out from when I started. Think what's come out in the last year or two. It's so much to keep up with, and we try around the country. I always try to sit in on a class.
Yeah.
I mean, just to see what I'm missing out on. Am I on the right page? I hate the term subject matter expert because I don't think anybody is. I mean, when you're an expert, that's when you're in the ground.
Right.
That's honestly, everybody has something to learn. There's no experts out, in my opinion. There's professionals. There's really smart people, but that's just how I think.
Yeah, I understand. And if anybody wants to get schedule you for a class or for some instructing, your company name is Hazmat 101 Consultants. Is that right?
Yep. You can go to hazmat101consultants.com. Or you can email me at bob@hazmat101consultants.com. We also do, like you guys, we do a video series of stuff on YouTube channel. So you can check out our YouTube channel. We'll get a monthly series there. And we also have started, not through Hazmat 101 Consultants, but some of the guys that we all together for the company, that digital magazine called Hazmat HQ. It's a free magazine. You can go to hazmathq.com and check it out. A lot of great instructors, people that have written books, people that are just getting into the circuit. And if anybody want to write an article, you certainly don't have to feel like, oh well, I've never taught anything, I've never written anything. Everybody has a voice, and that's what it's about. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has something to say. Everybody has something to share. And there you go.
So,
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you, Bob. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Everybody stay safe.
All right.